Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods, yeah. One in particular, I'm just a messenger, let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It's Tuesday, back in our regular slot, and we are going to be diving into number 50 to 26 in our Dynasty running back rankings pre-draft. We're gonna get there. We've been working on it all day. Looking forward to diving in. Dennis has also been dodging some dodgy weather. How's the storm situation?
You know what Dory says: keep swimming. Keep swimming. Keep swimming. It's been raining like heck for 2 days now, so not 2 days straight. It rained like heck on Sunday. Yesterday was fairly dry. By dry, I mean it didn't rain more. Started in last night. It's been raining pretty heavily most of the day, so had some wind. It's gonna be okay. I guess I don't have to water my new grass I planted this weekend. So, or should I say, had somebody plant. It's probably going to drown all of it, and I'll have to get it reseeded again. So, is what it is.
Well, it could be worse. We get some of those pounding storms too. I just don't like the hail or the potential for tornadoes. So hopefully you won't get any of that.
Yeah, they're saying we've got some chances. I was just looking at myself here on the screen and realizing I don't know if I told you, I got an autographed Nick Chubb jersey for my birthday. I got to get that up on the wall here. So.
There are a couple of pieces of news that came, both of them ending up having to do with the Chiefs. The first is they have signed Carson Wentz to a 1-year deal. All these teams trying to make sure they're covered with a backup quarterback. Do you like the Wentz move?
Yeah, I kind of do. Like I felt last year like he should have gotten a shot sooner. I think we know now he's not really a guy that's going to elevate your team, but he's a solid player, better than a lot of backups in the league. And we're seeing even more as they've added the 17th game, how important it is to have a quality backup. If you want to make a run, having somebody like Wentz to be able to sort of give you that insurance policy. Is Wentz going to elevate, Rashee Rice, Sky Moore, MVS, Kadarius Toney to a Super Bowl championship team? Probably not. But he's also going to not make he's not going to play like Dorian Thompson-Robinson and really give your team no shot to win. You just have to build the right plan around him. They got Matt Nagy there now as the quarterback's coach. I think, did Nagy have him in Philadelphia, or was it just Peterson that was there? No, because Nagy was in Chicago, wasn't he?
He was in Chicago,
but Peterson and Nagy both kind of run that Andy Reid.
I still think it's weird that Wentz didn't end up going back to the Rams. And some of the talk was that he didn't go to the Rams because he was going someplace where he could compete to start. You're not competing to start with Patrick Mahomes.
Maybe he's going to Tanya Harding Patrick Mahomes.
I mean, maybe. I don't. This kind of tells me, no, it shouldn't really be a shock to anyone after seeing what he looked like in Indianapolis and Washington. But Wentz seems to have firmly entered the kind of career backup phase.
Yeah, I mean, he's 31 years old, going to turn 32 during the season this year. He's entering that stage where he could be in the league another 10 years as a backup. And, it beats what I'm doing for a living, to be honest.
The Chiefs made one other move. They brought back CEH on a one-year deal. They had met with J.K. Dobbins, no deal there. He had met with the Chargers, no deal there. But CEH back on a one-year deal. I don't think this precludes them from also adding a back in the draft. But do you like CEH going back there? Is that kind of a sign there isn't really much of a market for him either?
We knew there wasn't much of a market for CEH. I think what it says is he decided, if I'm going to be a third, fourth stringer, I might as well be a third or fourth stringer with the best team in the league.
Yeah. Well, and it's a one-year deal, so no real terms announced. I don't think it's going to be a big money deal. It's just interesting for a guy that some people took 101 and proud in a rookie draft. Doesn't feel like it was that long ago. Not a great return on investment.
So I'll be honest. I did move him up when he landed at the Chiefs, but I had him at RB5 and I moved him to RB4 over Cam Akers. Is really
which that entire class seems like it was pretty, other than Jonathan Taylor, who's been rock solid. But Dobbins, we never really saw it come to fruition because of injuries. Akers, same thing, definitely injuries. DeAndre Swift, probably the second most successful guy there, bouncing around. So
yeah, that class had so much potential, it seems.
Well, that brings us to looking at our running backs, and I'll tell you, we don't think this year's draft class has incredible potential. So they probably won't break into, it'll be interesting to see if anyone breaks into the rankings group we're going to talk about on Friday, which is top 25. But you could see a couple break in here. We're going to look at number 50 through 26. And Dennis, I'll let you kick it off. Why don't you go 50 to 41? Give us your first 10.
All right. So I've been in the last half hour doing a perpetual update, and I can't find the guy I'm looking for to put at 50. So there he is. I got Michael Carter at 50. I think he's gonna have some value as a pass catching back. I know they like Amari DeMarcado. James Conner is the one there, but he's old and frequently injured. I got Dameon Pierce at 49. I know he really stunk it up last year. I think another year in the system will help him get better. He's gonna be the backup to Joe Mixon. I don't know that he's gonna get a ton of work, but he should be able to get a little bit of work. I've got Izzy Abanikanda at 48. He's the backup to Breece Hall. Breece is a stud. He'll get the occasional touch. 47, Elijah Mitchell. 46, Kendre Miller. Miller was a disappointment as a rookie. I really felt like with the suspension of Alvin Kamara and the odd year for Jamal Williams, who's an every other year guy, Kendre Miller had a great shot there in New Orleans and could have really taken advantage of it. He didn't, but I like him to get a little work this year, kind of move up a little bit. 45, I got Isaiah Spiller. Somebody's got to carry the ball there. They're going to bring in somebody. We know that. They got Gus. Right now, Spiller's the 2. 44, I got A.J. Dillon. We saw in the free agent market, the bloom is off that rose, and they brought in Josh Jacobs. Dillon is not – he's less of a threat to Josh Jacobs than he was to Aaron Jones. 43, I got Jerome Ford. I know they signed Deontay Foreman, and Nick Chubb is coming off the injury. Chubb was injured in week 2. He's had pretty much the entire season to get healthy. I know it's a second injury to that knee, but he's not a normal person. And so, I think Chubb will start off a little slow this year. Foreman is more, to me, a handcuff versus Ford, who I think will be the change of pace guy. 42, I've got Roschon Johnson. I'm not sure what to make of Chicago. They're going to have a rookie quarterback. They brought in Keenan Allen to pair with DJ Moore. They've got some receivers. It's going to be the Caleb Williams show unless there's a tremendous upset. So Roschon is just, I feel like he's going to be the guy over Khalil Herbert, and DeAndre Swift will be the lead back. Tyler Algier at 41. I know that we all believe Bijan's going to get some more work this year, and Bijan was RB8 last year. Bijan's going to be we expect him to have a better year, one of the top running backs for Dynasty over the next couple years. Let's see. So that was 41. That was Tyler Algier. So
yep,
it stopped at the right spot.
There you go. Yeah, you have some guys that I don't have in there. I wouldn't be shocked if Arizona takes a running back, or if Houston potentially takes a running back, and even the Jets, adding some guys. But I think in this, if you went beyond, probably from like 35 to 65. I feel like there's a group of guys that are more fungible, and we kind of have to see how it shakes out.
Yeah.
But for me at 50, I have Jamal Williams. I think he's still going to have a role back there. I think the Saints are still going to use all three of their running backs. And as you mentioned, Williams has typically done better every other year, so we'll see. 49, I have Khalil Herbert. I have dropped him quite a bit. I don't even have him in your top 50, but I still like the pop and the potential, but I think he's a distant third for me on these Chicago backs now going into a contract year. I just don't think he ends up being back. I have Elijah Mitchell at 48, probably the best handcuff to have, but maybe in a couple of years he'll get free or something happens to McCaffrey. Miles Sanders, I have at 47. I'm hoping to see a little bit of a better year this year, maybe a better offense in general there. I still think he has a little bit of life left in him. I, like you, have Kendre Miller at 46. Not much did we see rookie year, but hopefully he'll get a little more involved this year. I think also some of these, down in this range, I said this about quarterbacks, but it's kind of speaking to me a little bit about where we are with opportunities and rosters, and just not feeling great about a lot of people beyond a top tier. I have Tyler Algier at 45. I like you. I think he ends up being much more of a complimentary back in the new scheme. I think Bijan Robinson was taken for a reason. Maybe when his rookie deal is done, we see Algier get a chance somewhere else. We've seen him carry the load once. Was good as a rookie, but I just don't see a lot of path right now. Number 44, I'm compelled by the idea that we'll see a little more out of Tank Bigsby in year 2, and that with ATN going into a contract year, there's a possibility of him having an even more expanded role in the future. I'm not betting a lot on it. I'm not going wild, but I do have him. I think he should be rostered. He's somebody I'm watching. I feel similar about Roschon Johnson. They have DeAndre Swift there, but I prefer him to Khalil Herbert right now because it feels like he has a more stable future and maybe a more stable path to touches. I have Alexander Madison at 42. It's hard to tell what the Raiders are going to do. It's also possible they add another running back. They have Madison. They have Zamir White. I think Zamir White will be better, but I think Madison will be involved. And then 41, I have Ty Chandler. I feel like he's in a similar position in Minnesota. Clearly, he'll be involved, but if they thought he was going to be the guy, I don't think they would have jumped on Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones there for 1 year, but I also wouldn't rule out Minnesota taking, a back and adding and giving themselves some options in the off season. So that's 50 to 41 for me. Dennis, why don't you do 40 to 31?
All right, so it starts to get a little squirrely here because there are a lot of guys I could see taking advantage of an opportunity and potentially, rising up. I got Chase Brown at 40. He's going to be the backup to Zach Moss. I think Zach Moss showed in the right offense. He's somebody that can be reckoned with. We'll see if Moss can produce like Joe Mixon did. Mixon got a lot of opportunity, even though he lacked efficiency. I like Chase Brown to provide some pop and enough. I think he's got RB3 upside. And at 207 or 8 pounds, potentially if Moss falters, we could see Chase Brown kind of take over a little bit. 39, I got Keaton Mitchell. I love the fit of Derrick Henry, but also he's 29 years old, and it isn't like Lamar Jackson's just gonna stop running. I mean, Derrick Henry could really release Lamar Jackson's rushing potential to a degree that we haven't seen over the course of Jackson's career, and Mitchell's still gonna get some opportunities. 38, I got Zach Charbonnet. I don't know what's going on in Seattle. I know that Kenneth Walker is the more talented back. Charbonnet is going to get some opportunity. They've got a first-time NFL offensive coordinator and a first-time defensive-minded head coach. It feels like they're going to run the ball a lot, even though they've got a trio of wide receivers that rivals just about any trio in the NFL. 37, I got Ty Chandler. I know they brought in Aaron Jones. I like Aaron Jones a lot. I have Jones ahead of him, but they're not too far apart. It feels like a timeshare. Two guys that they're going to rotate series. They have very not complementary, similar skill sets. So I do like Ty Chandler. 36, I got Austin Eckler. I struggled with Eckler because he looked bad last year. He looked shot. Now, he's not a big back. I know he looks great in the offseason workouts. The dude is ripped. And trust me, he can do way more stuff on a pull-up bar than I can. And that's great. But he looked slow last year, and he did not look good. He's going to a new team and a new offensive scheme. He's likely to be the receiving back. Brian Robinson and Chris Rodriguez are going to be the two backs carrying the ball most of the time. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if Eckler doesn't breach 100 carries. He may see 100 targets, but I don't know that he's going to see 100 carries. At 35, I got Gus Edwards. I really wanted to put him higher, but it feels like they're going to bring somebody in. Right now, he's the number one out there. And as much as I am pulling for him to get a shot, he's not a terrific receiver. And the running back linked to them, he's just a slightly bigger version of Blake Corum, an early down back. Corum, maybe he can catch the ball a little bit. We've seen Gus catch dump off passes. So it's not out of the question that they draft Corum because Harbaugh's taking care of his guy, and Corum and Edwards split time because they're kind of the same back. At 34, I got Zeke Elliott. I honestly was looking for a reason to put him higher. I feel like it looks like it's being telegraphed. He's going back to Dallas. And Rico Dowdle isn't going to unseat him. They don't have a Tony Pollard there. Deuce Vaughn is not going to take a ton of touches, maybe a few receptions, but it isn't like Vaughn's going to get 100 targets this year. So Dallas is going to be a passing team. Zeke could go in there and average, 3.6 yards a carry and get 200 carries, and eight or 10 touchdowns. Have himself an 800 or 900 yard season, be inefficient, and really be just what Dallas needs. At 33, I got Raheem Mostert. If this wasn't Dynasty, Mostert probably is going to be maybe 15 spots higher. but it's dynasty. Mostert's 31, 32 years old. The dad bod is helping him to withstand a little more. He's never been known for being a big guy. He came into the league at like 195 pounds. I suspect he's probably 205, 209 now, and that he's hit his 30s. Still has good explosiveness, but they're going to it feels like Miami's going to work on putting Devin Achane in the position to make the big plays. Mostert will be the guy that gets most of the touches. He's not going to repeat his 21 touchdown season of last year. Could he get 10? I could see that, but I don't think it's going to be quite like it was last year. 32, I got Aaron Jones. I feel like he steps in as the starter, gets the veteran nod as the starter, but if at the end of the year we look back and him and Chandler are 50-50 on snaps and touches, targets, I don't think anybody is going to be surprised at all. And then at 31, I got David Montgomery. He feels like a guy that could be a lot higher, but I don't know. He's got a role. Jahmyr Gibbs, though, Montgomery is Jahmyr Gibbs' biggest fan, it seems like. Montgomery will be like when Gibbs gets him down there, he's like, no, you stay in. I'm not going to come in and steal this touchdown from you. Gibbs is very explosive. I wouldn't be surprised if Montgomery finished as an RB2, though.
Yeah, running back and these committees and what their breakdowns end up being, at this time of the year, especially before we see what teams do in the draft, you kind of have to take your best shot at how you think it's going to break down. And I think that's reflected in some of these ratings groups. Like you at 40, I have Chase Brown. I liked the flashes that we saw, but when you go back and look at his stats from last year, it's not quite as robust as in my mind. I'm like, he had like 400 or 500. No, he had two games where he had
200 yards.
two really good performances. So, I can't go any higher. I actually have Antonio Gibson there at 39. I think, we've seen backs get signed into the Patriots that profile as these kind of receiving guys that have done really well, that just consistently hang in there and put up points in this range. He feels like, a next generation James White to me, coming in. And there's a lot of questions about their offense. And I still think Ramondre Stevenson is their number one guy, but I took him down a little bit. I think they brought in Gibson to kind of be that spark plug, third down receiving back. I have Jerome Ford at 38. I'm like you. I think he'll remain a decent contributor. I liked what we saw. I think he was tracking even before Chubb got hurt to have some weekly flex value because he was getting involved. I don't see that demonstrably fading down because they signed Jerry Stonehands Judy. I have Zach Charbonnet at 37. I still think Kenneth Walker is the lead back there. What's the run pass split's going to be? What is the roles? We didn't get enough of a feel of how they really wanted to involve him in year one, and now they're changing schemes. At 36, I have Jaylen Warren, and I think you and I philosophically have a little bit of a different feel for what's going to happen with the Steelers. And based on last year and last year's scheme, I see where you have these guys ranked. Makes sense to me, but I actually think Najee Harris is going to have a bigger piece of the pie with Arthur Smith, and the fact that they went and got Cordero Patterson makes me even more nervous probably for Jaylen Warren. I think we're going to see a little bit of role shifting there. And so I have him down at 36, but I didn't feel comfortable going any higher. I have Austin Eckler at 35. I think he's going to, be able to lean into his strengths, which are kind of passing and coming in there and being a change of pace guy because he'll have a different kind of split. I've Gus Edwards at 34. I think he'll be a grinder. I agree with you. I think the Chargers are bringing somebody in. I don't even have Spiller in my top 50 anymore. I feel like he's more of a lottery ticket hold right now because it doesn't feel like It doesn't feel like Harbaugh and Greg Roman came in there and saw the existing Chargers pieces and thought we've got a lot to work with. It feels like they've gone in there and been like, well, it's time to do something completely different, boys. I have Raheem Mostert at 33. I agree with you. You know, he was RB2, I think, when he finished last year. If we were talking about redraft, I'll have him a lot higher. But for Dynasty, I don't, we know he's going to be in Miami for probably the next 2 years. And that's decent in the, what you talk about with running backs, especially in Dynasty, that 2 to 3 year window, but it's not incredible. I have Zamir White at 32. I know you're much higher. I guess I'm not sold on what the Raiders split is going to be, and that they won't add something to it because they've kicked the tires with a whole bunch of other running backs too. And I feel like if they thought that Zamir White was definitely a guy they wanted to go forward with, they wouldn't have made a play to bring Josh Jacobs back. So I liked what we saw from Zamir White down the stretch. I like the potential opportunity, but and maybe this rank is hedging my bets a little bit. And then at 31, I have Tyjae Spears. I thought he was a decent contributor last year, but with Tony Pollard coming in, I think that's going to be a split of some kind, but I think Spears ends up on the lower end of that, so I have him in that RB3 range. So, Dennis, why don't you give me the last 5 we're looking at today, which is 30 to 26.
So at 30, I have Chuba Hubbard, and he finished. I forget what it was he finished last year. I had it up.
I think he was RB
27.
Yeah.
So it wasn't super high, but I feel like he kind of established himself a little bit. I don't, I'm nervous about Miles Sanders. He's been there a year. I know they've got a new coaching staff with Dave Canales coming in, but they did bring in a couple big old guards to bolster the offensive line. I think Chuba holds on to that job, but I do think I think as athletic prospects, I think Miles Sanders was a much better prospect than Chuba Hubbard. But right now, Chuba's the guy. And at some point, you were talking about Jaylen Warren and Tyjae Spears, at Zamir White. It's tough to take into like some of these scenarios that have broad outcome potentials where, Zamir White could be RB10. They could draft somebody and make them the starter, and he could be RB's, 59 this year. It's a pretty broad opportunity. But I got Chuba Hubbard at 30. At 29, I've got James Conner, and I really struggled with where I was going to put Conner. He's the starter there, but it feels like they've brought in some guys to take touches away. Conner is getting older. He's got an injury history. They brought in Michael Carter, who's a really good pass catching back. Emari DeMarcado, he flashed last year. He looked pretty good. So, I want to give Conner kind of the lead back role there. I feel like Jonathan Gannon coming out of that Philadelphia squad and looking at how they use 19 running backs every week, I think that's going to negatively affect James Conner. So I have Conner at 29. Wouldn't be surprised at all if he finished his RB 14. At 28, I've got Alvin Kamara, and this is where I'm looking at the difference between dynasty and redraft. Kamara is still a good pass receiver. Derek Carr had a decent year last year. It feels like Dennis Allen's seat is already getting hot. I just don't know what's going to happen in New Orleans. I think if this wasn't a dynasty ranking, I'd probably have Kamara substantially higher. At 27, I've got Devin Singletary. I think Singletary, he's going home to an offense that he's familiar with, coming off a year where he went in and just took control of the backfield and had a good year. I think he's got a lot of momentum going into New York. they're going to draft a running back. Eric Gray and Gary Brightwell are the backups to Devin Singletary. And the last thing that I think Brian Daboll needs to do is, not give Daniel Jones a running game. Because if Jones doesn't succeed this year, I don't think Daboll makes it through the year.
Do you mean not give Drew Lock a running game?
Yeah, him too. And at 26, I've got Najee Harris. I've got Harris and Warren pretty close together. And really, I agree with you. I think Harris is going to have probably the bigger role. But Warren is going to be the pass catching back. And he's going to get bigger yardage in the receiving, getting the points for receptions. And he is a little bit younger. So I did give Warren the slight edge over Najee Harris. But there are some of these backfields, Tennessee, Pittsburgh, Minnesota. I think I've got them fairly close together.
That's the thing, though. In Arthur Smith's last few offenses, he hasn't used pass catching backs that much. I think that's why he has Cordero Patterson, who's kind of like a hybrid wide receiver. He loves to use tight ends, and that's why they keep collecting tight ends. But that was one of the reasons I don't think Bijan had as big of a rookie year as we expected, because he's a good receiver, and there just wasn't that much opportunity.
Well, I think Cordero is there because of the new kickoff rules. I think that's why Cordero is there. Is he going to get some RB touches? He is, but I don't think he's going to significantly impact. I don't see it being a three-way split. I don't see it even being 40-40-20, to be honest.
I mean, but honestly, you never thought Cordero Patterson was going to get involved in the backfield last year, and they still did, or that when you have Kyle Pitts, you'd use Jonnu Smith. I'm going to refer back to the Arthur Smith of it all and the acquisitions they're making. That's why it's not like Pittsburgh has a ton invested in Jaylen Warren either, another undrafted free agent. And it's what makes me a little nervous.
I mean, there's reason to be
nervous.
It
doesn't make me nervous because I don't roster a lot of Jaylen Warren because I'm not a believer. For me at 30, I have Zach Moss. I know you're a little bit higher. I am not convinced that Cincinnati won't add another running back in the draft. I like Moss. I also, I don't know. When I was thinking about it, I didn't feel like putting him higher at this point in time. Then at 29, I also have James Conner. I think he'll have another decent year, but he's been missing time the last couple of years with Arizona. Another team, I wouldn't put it past them adding some more to that backfield mix. It's really hard to know what they're going to do long term. Too, Conner coming into a contract year, so I felt comfortable with him there. I have Brian Robinson at 28. I think he's, they brought in Anthony Lynn to coordinate that running game in Washington, which I thought was a good sign. I think Austin Eckler is certainly going to eat into his opportunities as a receiver and will probably take some work. But, Robinson's been kind of steady in that RB3 range for the last couple of years. I think he will stay there. I have Aaron Jones at 27, not because I don't think he'll have a better 2024, but he's on a one-year contract. It's hard to know what the long-term future is, and I think in Dynasty you have to hedge a little bit. He's getting older. Where does he land? There are also it's fair to have some questions about Minnesota's offense, given that we still don't know exactly what they're doing at quarterback. And then at 26,
baby, Trojan pride.
Yeah. And then at 26, I have Devin Singletary. I liked him going back with Brian Daboll. I think we've seen him be a real successful contributor. He's a very solid RB3. I'm also with you. If this is New York's entire plan at running back, maybe Brian Daboll deserves to be on the hot seat. I don't think it is. Probably there would be another team. I think there are quite a few teams that will start picking up running backs in the third and fourth round. And just because they go later in the draft than in years past doesn't mean they won't be involved. I just think that's the nature of the value of running backs and and teams are just content to roll in with 3 or 4 guys and ride hot hands a lot more. So before we get out of here, I want to ask you a few questions. Who is somebody who you didn't have in your top 50 that almost made it for you?
I honestly, I've got several guys that I wrestled with, and I'll list them, but I'm going to pick maybe 1 or 2 and talk a little bit about. But like Tank Bigsby, Antonio Gibson, Miles Sanders, Michael Carter, though I did get Carter in there, and Jamal Williams. So I agree with you. I think Bigsby, I mean, he can't have a worse year than he did last year. And he does have a little bit of talent. They've talked openly about wanting to relieve some of the load off of Travis Etienne. Etienne does some things really well, but I think Bigsby is going to step up and will he move into the top 50? You know, I don't know. We'll have to see, but I like Bigsby. And Gibson, I struggle a lot with him. He was a receiver in college. They moved him to running back. Clearly, he doesn't have running back vision. You know, he doesn't run the ball well. He can catch it okay. Maybe he doesn't pick up, you know, for him, if he's involved in the passing game, he better be out running a route because apparently he doesn't pick up blitzers very well either. Both of those guys are people that I think could move up into that top 50. I'd like to see Bigsby, you know, have a renaissance of sorts.
So for me, I kind of went back and forth on a few people. I'm going to say mine is somebody that you actually got in there, and that was Keaton Mitchell. And I debated, you know, I liked what we saw from him last year, and I thought he was tracking toward a bigger role, but then he had that very big injury at the end of the year, and now they have Derrick Henry for at least a couple of years. I think it's going to be tough sledding for him to get back and get involved in 24. Probably won't see him make contributions until late in the season because usually, you know, especially even more so than like a pocket passing quarterback, you need your legs as a running back. And a lot of his was kind of speed and cutting. And so then if you're really looking toward him being involved in 2025, what is the landscape? Do they still feel the same? So ultimately I dropped him enough that he's not in my top 50, but I did like the potential from what we saw before. Who is somebody in the 26 to 50 range that you think could make a leap into the top 25 or maybe even in the top 12 if things broke right?
So I kind of talked about both of these guys a little bit. One is Zeke Elliott. I get it. They look like they're going to draft a running back, and maybe they will, but they need some offensive linemen. Leighton Vander Esch retired. They had a couple defensive linemen leave via free agency. Tyron Smith left. They have lots of needs. So bringing back Zeke and pairing him with Dowdle and Vaughn, I think they got one other person there. When they're going to be such a pass-heavy team, having Zeke Elliott as your personal protector quarterback, you know, and then he has the potential to rack up a bunch of touchdowns. So I like Elliott. Aaron Jones, if he can stay healthy, because of his pass catching ability, and he does have a nose for the end zone. The quarterback situation scares me. Whether it's, you know, whether they move up and get McCarthy or Drake May or Jaden Daniels, whoever may fall to them at 5, or whether they kind of move back and take Michael Penix or Bo Nix. Lots of things in the air, but the quarterback situation in Minnesota makes me a little more nervous about Jones. I feel like if Zeke goes back to Dallas, he's going back there expecting to be the guy. I think going away and Stevenson getting hurt, he showed Jerry. I think he'd have stayed in Dallas if it wasn't for the contract. Now it's like, okay, well, I'd like to go back home. let's get a reasonable contract done. So I like Zeke to pop up into the top 25.
So the one I'm going to go with is Zach Moss. And, last year we saw Mixon put up RB1 scoring numbers in Cincinnati just due to the volume of work and opportunities there. And I think what holds me back a little bit with Moss is not being sure if that's going to be the same, amount of opportunities and volume given him. But if he gets that kind of a workload share, I think we did see in spurts when he was filling in for Jonathan Taylor that he has potential to put up RB1 numbers, which could end up being a great return. Last question for you. Who in this range makes you the most nervous?
So for probably the opposite reason than you might expect, it's Roschon Johnson. So I've got Roschon at 42 because I expect DeAndre Swift to be the best back, to be better. I get it. Roschon's good at pass protection and catching the ball. DeAndre Swift is is as good or better and more explosive. He's more explosive as a runner than Khalil Herbert. However, we see players take steps all the time. Roschon is a big guy at 6 foot, 220 pounds, 225 pounds. Good pass blocker, good pass receiver, powerful runner. I have Swift inside my top 25 right now. I could see Roschon Johnson just flip that whole thing on its head and kind of take over that position for Chicago and just kind of be that guy. That makes me a little bit nervous because I probably have more shares of DeAndre Swift than I need.
Yeah, I have quite a few shares of DeAndre Swift too. I liked that landing spot. It would just it'll be interesting. I'm gonna say the one that makes me nervous. I was just looking. I don't even think you have him in your top 50. Is Brian Robinson? I still think he's going to be the.
That would be an error.
Yeah, I don't see him in there. I'm not wrong,
Yeah.
right? I was just scanning. I still think he's going to be probably the lead runner on there. But we've seen Eckler, if he's in the right system and he's going good, kind of dominate touches and be kind of the guy for fantasy. I also, if Washington takes Jaden Daniels, does he end up running quite a bit and eating into the work available for running backs? We've seen that happen with running quarterbacks before. So, I have him because of the talent and the potential, but he's probably the one in this range if things didn't break right. Because the other thing is we've seen them kind of clearing out a lot of the remnants of the old Washington system. And he was definitely, a key cog the last couple of years. Does he still fit what they want to do? So
yeah, he that was an error on my part. I must have pasted over him accidentally. So Robinson would be somewhere in the 31, 32, 33 range there. I think him and Eckler would be close together because I do think Chris Rodriguez will get he'll have a little bit of impact on Robinson's touches. They're very similar type of backs. Robinson's a little better pass catcher than Rodriguez, but not nearly as good a pass catcher as Eckler. We'll see what happens with the quarterback there, if it's Jaden Daniels or if it's Drake May.
Or who knows what's going to happen. You could convince me of just about anything at this point in time. Our friend Matt, when he was here on Friday, said he thinks Marvin Harrison's going to go in the first 3 picks, which means one of those teams is not going to take a quarterback. I don't feel like Washington can afford to be that team unless they like Marcus Mariota a lot more than I realized, or Ryan Tannehill suddenly makes an appearance.
Yeah, I'm not sure who might have the without having the draft in front of me and the pick trade chart. I don't know who might have the ability that doesn't need a quarterback to go up ahead of Arizona to get him.
Yeah.
Because I could see one of those teams trading back, especially if they don't have to go back too far.
New England feels like the most likely to trade back, but I would think people coming up for 3 or 4 are going for quarterbacks. So,
What do we know? We're just fantasy analysts.
yeah, we shall see. Okay, well, that'll do it for us today. We will be back a little bit later than normal on Thursday, looking at our top 25 running backs. Until then, if you need to fill up your days with anything, why don't you, Dennis, tell the people what they can do?
Get the podcast feed moved off of Google to something else, so you can get us directly into your phone, into your computer, into your tablet. Download, subscribe, give us a like. Go follow us on Twitter at I think Roundtable FF is the at Nighthawk 7734 is your handle.
Yep.
At culture_coach is mine. Go give us a follow, and we'll talk some fantasy football. I'll do a little heavy metal music now that I'm working with my son's band too, and talk kiddie baseball with my other son, and let's have a good time.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Looking forward to looking at our top set of running backs. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and if you're in the path of a storm, keep your head on a swivel.